Hold on, then let me pull up.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to About Islam, an online platform that presents mainstream Islam to the world. I'm Layla Abdullah Poulos, contributor and managing editor at NBA Muslims and co-organizer of the Black Muslim Authors Conference. And welcome to the fourth panel of this wonderful conference. It has been such a joy. Remember to check us out at www.aboutislam.net and also see what we got going on social media. We have a lot of stuff. We have great articles, posts, inspiring posts, all kinds of things. So it's really, really wonderful. I would like to thank our sponsors for the Black Muslim Authors Conference, NBA Muslims, Muslim Girls Reads, Every Kind of Lady, Muslim Anti-Racism Collaborative, Hot Hijab, Heart Women and Girls, Daybreak Press, right? I always say publishing, but it's press. Daybreak Press, African American Muslim Alliance of Tampa, and the Muslim Connection. I've been looking forward to this because I write across all kinds of genres. I write fiction, I write blogs, I contribute to About Islam, other platforms. I have peer-reviewed journal articles and everything like that. And I'm scared to death to enter the screenwriting world. Because it is a very challenging, very specific form of writing. So I'm so glad that we are going to be able to listen to all these wonderful Black Muslim screenwriters. I will not be moderating. The person that is moderating is author/screenwriter Umm Juwayriyah. Assalamu alaikum, Umm Juwayriyah. How are you doing?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum, panelists. We are excited. How y'all doing?
I'm out. I'm going to sit and listen and try to grab some miles. And I got this right here. All right.
All right. Definitely take notes. Definitely take notes. All right. So let's get started. Alhamdulillah. We have with us today Brother Malik Salaam coming from the ATL. I was with Nasheed Jackson last Sunday and he told me it's Atlanta. So Atlanta.
There's no extra T. There's only one.
Okay. Say it for me one time.
Atlanta.
Okay.
It's actually no T's.
No T's.
Atlanta. There's no T's in Atlanta. No.
That's right. Deaf Poetry Jam alum and film producer. We also have with us arts and culture editor for Sapilo Square and indie film producer sister Malikah Shabazz. Assalamu alaikum.
Malik Salaam. Used to be the editor. I'm not anymore, but.
Thank you. We got to update that for you, inshallah.
Still part of the team, though. Yeah, I'm still part of the team, but.
Alhamdulillah. And we also have my sister, Nia Malika Dixon, absolutely hailing from Baltimore, Maryland. I believe you're in the Midwest. Where you at right now, sister Nia?
West Coast.
You still are you in Cali?
I am on the West Coast, back and forth from home in Arizona to LA. Right now, hiding out in Arizona while I'm writing a script.
All right. Yep. She's a script writer, producer, author, educator, and the founder of Black Muslim Girl Fly. So we are excited to have her with us. And last but definitely not least, we have my brother, Tobin Adejuma. And you can correct me. Did I get halfway right?
You got it right.
Okay. He is an educator and screenwriter in Memphis, Tennessee, by way of New York, originally from Nigeria. And is that right?
Yes.
I got it all. All right. Alhamdulillah. So we are extremely excited to have all of you here. We're going to jump right into the questions. What does being Black on both sides mean to you in your film work? We always play this game on the panels. So who wants to start first? Brother Malik?
It's an interesting thing for me to be born both Black and a Black Muslim. So I went to Muhammad schools my entire life. I probably started in 3rd grade, so not my entire life. I went to public school for all the 2 years, right? And in 3rd grade, I arrived at Muhammad schools, and it was interesting because they were not too far out of the nation, right? And a lot of those things that identified them as Black was still very much present. It wasn't just about being Muslim, it was also being about Black. So it's also about, you know, these same things that came out of the Black Panther Party and the nation, these rules of self-empowerment and self-governing and, you know, very anti-disestablishmentarianism going on in the situation. And so that definitely affected not only my thoughts. So that coupled with 5 prayers a day, you know, prayers actually happening in school, you know, so that definitely becomes part of your identity. And then the Muhammad schools, just like HBCUs or any Black institution, also you find yourself not necessarily in the choice neighborhoods. So you're Black, living the Black experience in a Black place, and then coming from Atlanta, I'm also living with, you know, a Black infrastructure that's around me. So it's almost like getting like this triple dose of Blackness that involves politics and religion and in every other sense of my identity. I don't think that I am able to separate the two, right? So even as a Muslim, even when I meet Muslims from other places, my identity of Muslim, it's almost like Malcolm going to Hajj for the first time and realizing, whoa, it's Muslims of every color. I mean, that's kind of, you come from the Atlanta masjid, you forget that, you know, right across town, not even across town, 15 minutes away, there's 14th Street Masjid that has people from everywhere because you're in your Black Muslim bubble, so to speak. So for me, there is almost not even a separation. Sometimes I have to remind myself that, you know, even if I'm talking about Muslim, I'm just not talking about Black Muslims, because that is definitely without a doubt the majority of not only my experience, but my identity of who I am.
I went to Sister Claire Muhammad School too in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I know exactly what you're talking about. You know, that Black on both sides to me is like, that's me inside and out. That's my culture. That's who I am. It's my identity. So whatever stories I'm telling, it's going to come through that lens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same here. I grew up in the community of Imam Morphy Muhammad. And so being Black and Muslim were intertwined. There was no deviation. There was no having to choose either or. And so between doing that and then attending African-centered education through 4th grade, I did my 1-year public school and my parents were like, nope. And then Islamic schooling for 3 years and then back to African-centered education. I had a very grounded, my foundation in my Blackness and my Muslimness was very grounded. Even being in a Muslim school with other cultures, there was so many Black and other nationalities of Muslims that it balanced out. It wasn't until I got to college that I started dealing with the MSA, where it was like, that's when the reality, the Black Muslim bubble burst, and the reality of this world outside of my community, that this world exists and it's not what I thought it was going to be. But yeah, my experience was similar to everyone else's, growing up in a household where being Black and Muslim did not clash, they did not conflict.
Well, my experience is definitely a little bit different in the sense that, you know, I'm coming from Nigeria, and these are the things I never give a thought to. I never thought about being, of course, obviously being Muslim. You know, there are a lot of Christians in Nigeria also, but being Black is something I never, you know, give any kind of thought to. I'm just, you know, I'm just ham, right? So. But definitely, moving to the United States in 2013, that's it. The reality is different, and then this part of me that I've never given a thought of started becoming apparent. So, so that's why it's important to me, because I'm like, obviously, I'm Black, and the immigrant community and Nigerian immigrant community were, you know, Black also, and I feel a kind of like I don't know how to put it, more ease, right? even like, for example, coming to Memphis, for example, you know, we have lot of different Muslim community, and I just feel more ease with the Black Muslims, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. It definitely makes sense. I was a little bit different. I went to public school my entire life, which is really different. You know, my husband, he's another one like you all who was, you know, in a Muslim school his entire life. But I went to public school, so I was, you know, always the odd one out. You know, the only one who couldn't do this, or the only one who had a name who was different. Different experiences from even the other Black children. So it was very apparent to me early on, kindergarten, you know, you're different. Because when, you know, my mother sent me to school with a list of things I couldn't eat. You know what I mean? No pork, no Skittles, no, you know, check the cans, check that. So it was really apparent to me that, you know, I'm Black, but a different type of Black than some of the other Blacks. And then going to, you know, immigrant masajids and things like that later in life, because we were a part of the Dar al-Islam community. So we at least had that, you know, Black Muslims in you know, a community of Black Muslims to strengthen us and give us our foundation. But outside of that, it was a little bit different. So the Black on both sides, you know, it's interesting how people, when is your first experience of seeing that, you know, it's over here like this, and then over here, it's a little bit different. And I think every Black Muslim has that, you know, that Black Muslim wake up call. So it's interesting to see how that goes into your stories. But what brought you all into screenwriting or filmmaking? What was the catalyst for that?
It was when I went to high school that I discovered storytelling that was beyond my Black experience. And that was when I went to public school for the first time, because I told my mother I wanted to go to public school before I went to college. And funny enough, I went to Spelman for my freshman year. And so I was attached to the Atlanta Masjid at that time. So when Malik brought that up, I remember, you know, the community back there. But yeah, it wasn't until high school that I discovered Shakespeare and all this other literature, these stories that went beyond my experience that really lit a fire in me when it comes to storytelling. Up to that point, I had like subsided on Black literature, you know, Nikki Giovanni and Intozaki Shange and Amiri Baraka, and like, you know, so much like rich Black American literature filled my life up until that point. So that was when I realized how far storytelling could go. So it wasn't just within my community, I could reach everybody.
I find that so interesting, Nia, because I remember being in the 11th grade and we had got a new teacher, English teacher. We had never experienced anything out of Sister Sandra El-Amin, who I give so much credit to my ability to be able to even speak about Black literature. I mean, from the time that we were in 4th grade, that's I think when she first became my teacher, till I graduated, except for my 11th grade year, all the way, she took a break in my 11th grade year, and we got this new teacher, and she introduced Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, up until this point, my whole life had been Richard Wright. My everything had been Black, everything. And I remember, because school wasn't my thing, just say that school wasn't really my thing, right? It's interesting that I became a writer because nobody saw that coming. School wasn't my thing, right? And she brought Edgar Allan Poe, but literature was the one place that I still found an interest. So no matter where life was taking me, you know, everything from diagramming a sentence to reading Black Boy by Richard Wright could move me. Yes. Math couldn't do it, science couldn't do it, but English and literature could do it, up until Edgar Allan Poe, right? And I mean, I found this writing, not only did I find it limiting, but I found it soulless. I couldn't catch the rhythms of it. I couldn't understand it. And it wasn't until that I went to the military after I graduated, and which was my first time really interacting with people outside of Black people, literally having conversations with people who weren't Black, Atlanta had Black police officers, and it didn't matter where you went, it was Black, right? Different from what it is now, it was Black. And but those experiences in the military, having to go through boot camp and live with and interact with these other cultures, when I went back and discovered this other literature, these other writers, I had somewhere to pull from, right? And when I was just hearing you say that, I was like, wow, it's interesting how your background plays into what draws you to writing. Because I think if I went to public school and I had not been exposed to the Black authors first, I would never have been able to even develop an appreciation for anything else.
Right. And that foundation kind of laid the standard for the kinds of storytelling that you expect, right? And so when I was introduced to Poe and Shakespeare, it was like extra. It was like, ooh, this is interesting. This can take like storytelling in a whole direction, right? And so that I understand exactly what you're talking about. But I'm a fan of Edgar Allan Poe because I like those dark stories. And then when I found out, you know, he's from Baltimore, it was just like icing on the cake for me. Like, and I'm just a big fan of storytelling. So
I've been able to grab that appreciation, but it had to be through life. And I think that if I hadn't had the foundation, I wouldn't be able to circle back around and say, oh, you know, one of my favorite authors, I always mess up his last name, but my guy Chuck, who was the originator of Fight Club, right? Yeah. I like all of his books. I mean, I've read Choked, I've read, you know, all of his books to me are, but it comes from a different rhythm. It comes from a different space. And I had to appreciate literature first before I could appreciate any other space.
Yeah, I think for me as well, growing up, a lot of the different stories that I read were basically from Black writers. So it was definitely the Richard Wrights, the James Baldwins, the who I can't think her name, but the Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry trilogy. I've read that so.
Mildred D. Taylor, my favorite.
Yes.
First time I ever cried, I was in the 3rd grade and I read her book and I was sitting there crying in the classroom.
Yes.
They were like, what's wrong?
Yeah, all those
I love her
books.
to death.
And there's another book called Forever Friends. I'm so bad with names, but either way, it was a great book, and I read it so many times as a child. Because for me, if I can like visualize it as I'm seeing it, I'm hooked. Like I'm literally reading it and I'm seeing it as I'm reading it. So for me, and that goes into me being a visual person, that really helped. And so I think I agree, like having that foundation did help me, even though we were reading Othello when we were younger and not realizing that was Shakespeare. So for me, I was introduced to Shakespeare through Othello, but then and it opened up the conversation of someone who was not Black writing a Black character. So that conversation, and it's a good story. It's a great story. So, but then that also did leave it open for me when I got to college, because being in African-centered education, there was a lot of emphasis on our stories and our authors. But then going to college, I agree, having that foundation and understanding, the importance of writing. And I think seeing myself first before reading these other stories, because there's some stuff you read and it's just like, I can't, that's just not my experience, but it's a story. And if it's a good story, it's a good story, and if you can tell the story and I can keep up with it, regardless if it's my experience and not, then you're doing your job. So yeah, not to just, completely say something everybody else just said, but definitely I grew up with the standards, the Black standards. And then as I got to undergrad, I was introduced to other characters as well. Other authors, sorry.
Well, for me, it's pretty simple. I just love the performing arts. I love theater. I love, when I was in high school, I joined a theater group in Nigeria, and through that, I wanted to write my own stories. So when I was young, I was obsessed with good movies. So I have a classic in Nigeria called Sawoweide. It's like the best. Like I will come back from school, just put it on play, watch it over again. The same thing with Coming to America. I've watched it like 35 million times. Right. So I love the performing arts. I wanted to sing. I want to be a musician at a point in time, but that's another story. Well, so basically, like just loving movies, good movies that much, I began to say, okay, I think I can make up stories too. And I want to make up this story. I want to write. I want to put it. So right from high school days, when my dad came home for the first time, my dad had been an undocumented immigrant in the United States for like 12 years. I didn't even get to see him until I was 12 years old. So that was the first time I was seeing my dad. So he came home with fancy American camera and stuff like that. And I wrote a story and I called my siblings and my cousins, what, we're gonna use dad's camera and make an amateur movie. So it was just that right from little. Just want to write something. I want to make movies. So that's pretty much.
I just realized with his response that I had actually took the conversation somewhere. Nia had just reminded me of how I was exposed to literature, but your question actually was how did we get into screenwriting, which had nothing to do nothing to do with my whole rant about Edgar Allan Poe.
Right? It kind of goes. I think that's
I gotta answer the question over.
I do want to say that it was, I think I was 17 when I read a script for The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and that's when I knew I wanted to write film and television. And that was like right around the time I was a freshman at Spelman, and I was a crazy kid. So I had written all these letters to all these magazine editors, to Essence and like all these magazines, asking for an internship. Like, who does that? Like just random Black girl. And one company responded and said, yes, come on our magazine. We are looking for help. And it was called Urban Profile. Little did I know that this was the precursor to Vibe magazine. So, and it just happened to be based in Baltimore. And around that same time was when I had read the script of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And so I started interning at this magazine, and I got to interview Spike Lee about Malcolm X. And that's really what kicked it off. Like, I knew I wanted to do something in the entertainment industry that would reflect Black Muslim people, because I was inspired by that.
Yeah, I think for me, it physically manifested itself in my undergrad when I took an intro to film class. Like the seed had been put there back when I was like in the second or third grade, when I saw Daughters of the Dust and met Julie Dash, but it took time for that seed to really grow and flourish. But when I was in undergrad, I took an intro to film class because I needed a humanities elective. And I was like, oh, let's take this. And it was just like, and after that class, I remember going to the computer. I didn't know anything about how the formatting of the script, none of that. Because the intro to class, it was an intro to film in general. So it talked a lot about, shots and scenes and stuff of that matter. It didn't focus on writing per se, but I remember, I'm on a phone call. Sorry, get out. Sorry. I remember going to the computer lab with my floppy disk, which I still have, and I wrote a script. It was like a version of Save the Last Dance, except instead of the girl having to go live in the hood with her father, it was a girl that had to go live in the suburbs with her mother because her dad. It was basically inverted. It was supposed to be Raven Simone and the whole thing, but it was a ripoff. But it doesn't matter. I wrote it. I still have that floppy disk to this day. It's funny, I kept that, but that was the first time where I actually was like, okay, I can come up with something as well. That was the first time it like physically manifested itself.
I think for myself, I always had a love for movies. I even remember the first movie that I could actually recall. Like, I can recall the first time I went to the theater to see Popeye, and I can recall the first movie I watched with my father, which was Mahogany. And I can remember how much movies affected just culture, right? I came up in the 90s, so even like movies like Colors and Boys in the Hood, and these things just kind of changed. I watched how they changed culture, things that we did not know about, we would learn through movies. And so for me, it was definitely in the storytelling. I started as a poet, right? So that's where I first started writing. I started as a performance poet, and I would travel around the country and do these open mics, and eventually I did HBO Deaf Poetry. And then after that, the pressure was more on how to make a living. Okay, so now I've got to the point that I've been on television, and these colleges are bringing me out to do poetry. And one day I had this idea that I was going to take my performance poetry and put it on film. And I was going to make like this docu-poem. I was going to take poetry and interview footage from crackheads and homeless people. I had a homeboy at the time who had just got diagnosed with AIDS, and and the stories were so rich. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna put these together with my poems. And I started to see how fast it would move. Like next thing you know, I was on this panel with Reverend Jackson and at the Congressional Black Caucus. All these things were happening. I was like, man, film is, and I reflected on my love for this. And I was like, film is a powerful medium. I mean, it's, I don't know if you all seen this movie, My Name is Dolomite. But I literally had that moment. I literally had a moment where I was like, I might be able to get 100 people, maybe 1,000 people on stage. I've had done the venues with 1,000 people in them. And I'm like, I can do these, or I can release this film and I can reach people everywhere with my message. And more people, only some people like poetry. Everybody likes movies, right? And so my next step was, because I put the documentary together with some help. I had a brother, Rod Holloman, shout out to Rod. He was just such a good brother that showed me how to work the premiere program and the actual structure of the documentary. But I decided from there, I was like, well, let me just shoot a movie. I mean, I'm a writer. Like, so the same thing. I went in and I said, okay, let me go get me a book. I got a Sid Fields, screen book. And from there, I just started to, then I started to watch movies different. Now I'm watching movies for, these plot points and these act breaks and all of these things that I'm reading about. I'm now taking and saying, okay. And I've always had more than a pedestrian taste for art. So my taste for a movie, even though I love the hood classic, I watched New Jack City, but I also, I can watch Chinatown and Gladiator and these other movies that kind of, now I'm examining them different. And I wrote my first screenplay, and I wrote, produced, edit, every step of the way. I taught myself every step until I completed it. And from there, I have fallen in love with movies on a whole nother level. I couldn't see myself not making film. Like that's where that led to.
So the next question is it important for your characters to be Muslim and Black, and why?
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I mean, is it all the characters or just one?
I'm going to tell, like,
I mean,
ahead,
not
Nia.
all of them. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
Well, I was going to say those are the only kinds of stories I have a desire to tell, because those are our stories. And that's the reason why I got into film, is to tell our stories. They weren't in movie theaters. They weren't in the television shows that we were watching. And so that's why I decided to move to LA. And that was the whole reason for being. Those are the kinds of stories that I was created to tell, because that's who I am. That my creator made me a Black Muslim woman.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, thus far, majority of my characters have been Black and Muslim.
Right.
Do they all have to be Black and Muslim? No, not necessarily. But I do think it's important to have Black Muslim characters who are nuanced and diverse, because we truly have not seen that many in mainstream Hollywood media. We haven't seen that many diverse depictions of Black Muslims. So for me, being a Black Muslim and a Black Muslim woman, born a Black Muslim woman in America, in Detroit, there is a specific story that I can tell in a way that others can't. And so it definitely, especially since the past few things I've written have taken place in Detroit, so it directly informs the characters that I've written. So yes.
Yeah. Just to follow up on what they've said. I mean, there's a saying that attributed to Chinua Achebe like to say a lot that, you know, until the lion learns to tell its story, you know, it's gonna be favoring, you know, the hunter anyways. So again, for me, not all characters, you know, because that's not our reality, right? That's not the reality. Every main character has to be a Muslim, has to be black, for me. And the reason for this is pretty simple. I try to, you know, when I'm serving Netflix or Hulu, I actually just go and write Muslim film, right? I want to see something that I can identify to. Now, you know, I may say, okay, I understand the identity politics and stuff, but what about my children? The other day, my nephew, who is 5 but very outspoken, was here. They were visiting us, and we were watching Ali's Wedding on Netflix, right? So, and you know, they're from Iran, Shia, and he saw them, you know, making sujood or saying, you know, taslim, and he said, they're Muslim? And he said, yeah, they're Muslim. And I told my brother, and this is the reason why it's very important for us, you know, to write films that our children can identify with. Now that film, it's a good Muslim film, but it's my nephew can see the Muslimness in it, but he can't see himself. And like because it's not Black Muslim film like that. So, and plus me, positionality, right? My position as a Muslim, it's just gonna affect the way I write, right? I'm not gonna act like the white people coming to Africa and telling how the story is, you know, before things fall apart and things like that, you know. Yeah, right. So that's what I know. I don't know how a cocktail party looks like. I'm not gonna go, you know, spend a lot of time researching book or reading and say, okay, so that I can write that. So I'll just write for my experience. So.
I find that interesting because I definitely write from my experience, but I can't say that. So I have a few things going on, right? I have definitely the fact that I was born and raised a Muslim, right? Which is my foundation, right? But I also spent a lot of time in other places, right? So I have a strong, I don't want to say allegiance. It sounds crazy, right? But it's true. Like I have an allegiance to the hood, Like I have an allegiance there, right? And I also have a very strong allegiance to being a Black male who comes from statistics, single mother homes, you know, that type of thing. So when I'm creating, all of those things are at my forefront. So there are times that I am not creating from that part of myself. So there's times that I am not writing something that's just for the hood, right? And there's times that I'm writing things that are not just for Muslims, right? But it's interesting because even, let's say I'm working on a film and this is like a hood flick, right? In my mind, these characters, because I didn't grow up with people named John. You know, I didn't grow up with people named Samantha. I don't know these names. You know, and they actually, when I first started hearing them, I used to be like, yo, people really named Tim. I guess. You know, that was like a surprising thing. I'm not, you know, is his name really Tim? You know, so there's times that I'm not creating from that place, and therefore the character. And then there's sometimes where all of these worlds collide for me, and then I'm pulling from. So to answer the question, no, they're not always Muslim, for me, and that's because I have other indoctrinations as well.
The thing about being a Black American, especially a woman, is that we have insight to everybody's experience. And it's kind of like you have to for survival's sake, right? You got to know how to move in different spaces. So that's one thing that I don't have a difficulty like writing from another perspective. Like there's a film that I wrote and directed called City in the Sea about a white homeless man who lives in Venice Beach. And it wasn't difficult for me to write that because of all the spaces that I've moved in as a Black Muslim woman from America, right? So that gives us a little bit of an edge because we have to learn how to move in all these different spaces. So not to say that everything that we create will exclusively be Black and Muslim, but through the lens of that experience, those are the stories that I really, really want to tell. Even though I can tell you about Judah, who lost his family in a car accident and now lives homeless in Venice Beach, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that was a powerful addition to it, because we do move in different spaces, regardless of our upbringing and our, our community influences. We all know non-Muslims, or we may even have, most of us, especially Black American Muslims, we may even have non-Muslim relatives, Christians, Jews, whoever in our family that we've been exposed to. And so we have that as well that we can draw from. So moving in different spaces gives you, a broader palette to create from. Storytelling has a long history in Islam, and especially in the Black community. Do you feel filmmaking is supported enough in our communities? And not, it's probably really just creative arts. Is that supported enough amongst Black Muslim communities? So Hibala, I wanted to start with you, because I know, coming from a cultural, different cultures, how they, do you feel like that's supported in your Nigerian community?
I don't think so. No. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think so. And then because our understanding of evangelism, of preaching, of impacting the community, of impacting change, is one way, right? It's like, okay, the imam gets on the minbar and talks, and we go to a salatu on Sunday, and we do all this dhikr wirdi, and then everybody's fine. And then we go, and then that's it. But that's just not realistic, right? That's just not realistic. It's we live the power, like Brother Malik have said, the power of media is huge, right? Especially like storytelling, right? They were like with a few movies, they'll have you, questioning your own thoughts. Like, okay, this thing is not that, that's the power of art, and I don't think it's supported really. I wish it would be supported more than the kind of support that we have right now. I was like, I wrote my first novel, Love in Ramadan, particularly, like you said, like targeting Nigerian Muslim community, especially in New York and other places. And the reception was good. It's a book, right? The reception, like, oh, our son wrote a book, mashallah, let's do a salat, let's, Allah Akbar, all of that. But I know, like, there are places for books, and there are places for movies, and movies, have, a wider reach audience. Some of those fathers, they would just buy, they just bought the book for buying the book's sake. Yeah, we'll support our brother, but it will be different if it was movies. And I heard a lot of feedback from the young people in the Nigerian community saying that, I read the book, but it would make a beautiful movie. A lot of people want to watch it. We can have a family pick. And I was like, okay, yeah, what kind of, but then the support is really, really lacking, right? We need to change the way we view what works, because at the end of the day, then we just like to complain. Well, they're portraying us this way, they're portraying us that way. I'm not about complaining. Just do what you want. Don't focus on what people are doing to you. Do what you can, to change that. So I'm not really into there is Islamophobia in media, and I'm not gonna worry about what other people are doing, what I don't have control over. I'm gonna worry about what I have control over, which is supporting hearts in the Muslim community.
Yeah, I agree. I think outside of like the creative community, film is still seen as like, oh, you still into that film thing, like it's just a hobby. Like a lot of people don't take it seriously, and it's really weird because like he said, people complain about images all the time about what this movie got to be about that, and like people don't realize that film is propaganda. People believe what they see, period, full stop. And if you want to see diverse Black Muslim characters in film, then you need to support those of us who are creating those characters. Like I think within the creative community, there are pockets of people who support us, but in general, there's this idea of what a Muslim film looks like. And it's not stuff that I write, because I'm not trying to write another story about a brother that got out of jail. Like I've seen that enough. Every Black Muslim man didn't convert in jail. I don't need to see that. I don't need to see the story of the woman that converted because of her man and now he's slaying it. And it's like, those stories exist. Yes, those are stories, but I don't want to see that anymore. Like, that's not my experience. Like, so like my first short I did was about a Muslim woman who found out she was pregnant out of wedlock. And I got the reception of some people who were like, this is dope, what happens next? And then you have some people who just would straight stuck for the law, she needs to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, bruh, you are proving the point of my film, that you are so caught up in what's wrong and right that you're not even looking at the totality of the situation, that there is a woman who is with child and her main idea is what people are going to think. But people don't, I don't want to see boring Muslim stories. So like, I don't want to just see the story of we went to the match and we went home. That's boring. Don't nobody want to see that. We want to see actual nuanced representation. So I don't think we don't quite get the support we get. Not only that, but even within Black film period, we're seeing this new renaissance of Black characters coming up. And there's still a little bit of, they're not quite, the Black Muslim is not quite there yet. Like, we're getting there, one will get dropped in every now and then, but in terms of like a full nuanced or more than one full nuanced project about Black Muslims or Black Muslims within a story where they aren't incarcerated. Like, where's the movie with the Black Muslim woman who's an accountant? We haven't seen that yet. Where's a movie about the Black Muslim brother who is, he's the bad guy, but it's because he's a cyber villain and he's out here robbing all these rich white hedge funds? Like, where's that story? I want to meet that guy, you know? So we haven't gotten there yet.
And her film is called Consternation, and it was an official selection for the BMG Fly Film Festival. So yes, that was a great film. I really enjoyed it.
Make sure you drop your links in the chat box so they can text it out to the live if you have time to. All of you, just go ahead and do that so that we can plug it into the live on About Islam. Brother Malik?
It was so many interesting things said in reference to this. I think that the support is not always there because I feel like I have to preface stuff sometimes. I'm born and raised Muslim. I raise Muslim children, right? But I know, coming from a Muslim community, sometimes as Muslims, we don't always, it's crazy because honesty is supposed to be at the forefront of what we are, right? But when it comes to outside world, right, there's one thing to know what's going on in your own house, right? There's another thing to open that door to that house and let everybody else look inside, right? I moved furniture for a lot of years, and we would come into people's house, and it'd be one thing when you get on the phone with them, and then you get to the house and you're thinking this sister is all the way together, and you come in here and this house is filthy. You're like, what is going on here? Like, what is what's the rip? Why is this looking like this? You sound so professional on the phone, right? And I think you live a life where your women are covered and you're very particular about your diet. I mean, that's a big thing. We don't eat no pork, like no pork in a pork society. We ain't eat it, right? So we have these things that are who we are, but we also have all these other things that are just human, right? And we're not open to them being discussed all the time, right? Just like Sister Malikah's movie with this woman, but we don't want to say it's a law. You're not supposed to fornicate. There's no adultery. So we shy away from any time there is something that says, yo, but we're also human, right? And I think that that is what shies people away from being able to fully support. It's like, it's Id, we're in the parking lot, are we gonna have music or not? Are we gonna have music? You know what I mean? Like, and then it has to be this big discussion. Are we gonna have music? Is it okay to have music? And we find ourselves in this situation in a lot of things. My first novel that I put out was called Sooner. And I knew that I was playing with fire, but I had talked to all of these people whose Arabic was their first language. And I was like, yeah, really break down Sooner for me. Like, and I had so many of them tell me, well, in America, y'all say Sunnah and just are referring to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, right? But Sunnah in Arabic just means way. It's all it means, right? And so in writing this novel, I wrote this novel about these young men trying to find their way, trying to wade through the muck and mire of growing up on the west side of Atlanta and in the 90s with drugs and women and, all of this thing and trying to find their way. And I had older Muslim brothers read it and be like, yo, I mean, I had to work through some of the language, but, it was really good. You know what I mean? But I think that those types of things we have to be able to, push past the image of what we are and really embrace what we are in its entirety. I think, and therefore, and if we did that, I think we would have way more support than the support that we have.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. When I was a freshman in college at Spelman, it was 1991. And things were a lot different than they are now. So it's like, the influence for me was Malcolm X. So I read that book, his autobiography, when I was way too young. I was probably 11 years old. So when the movie came out, it was like, oh my God, this is a visual representation of what I've read. I'm so excited. But the thing that I was most excited about was this fully realized life of a Black Muslim. His journey was so authentic. That was the kind of storytelling that I was hungry for. It wasn't something that was, oh, this is how we are, and this is what we do, and this is our life, and we're proper, and we always follow the rules. That's not reality. And that's the kind of storytelling that I was hungry for. So when Malcolm X came out, that was such an inspiration for me to tell our stories in reality, like they really are, raw, and because we deserve it. And as a community, if we don't declare that, if we don't declare that we deserve to be fully realized human beings in our own stories, then we are not going to have the kind of quality storytelling that we should have.
And that's on both sides, right? Like that's when we open this thing about Black on both sides,
yes,
that's the same thing. It's Black on both sides. So even a lot of the movies that we're seeing now about Black people, they're starting to become, even in being woke, they're starting to become one-dimensional, right? Yeah. Because we still we have this thing as a people that we definitely want to, like your grandmama say, you go out, with your best foot forward, you don't want to, and you get people saying all the time, oh, I'm tired of these slave movies, or I'm tired of this. Well, it's not that you're just tired of that, but you're tired of the one-dimensional perspective that it gives. It's because it's so much fuller. There's so many other parts of slavery that hasn't even been told. There's so many other parts of the hood that hasn't even been told. There's also many a woman or a Black man or a Muslim that hasn't been. Every time I watch it, I tell my wife, every time I see a movie about Black Muslims, we're bow tied, and it's like that's our only place. We're going to either be that or be the butt of the joke for being that. That is going to be the deliverance. But there's such a wider scope of who we are Black on both sides that I think needs to be explored.
We are not a monolith, you know, and our stories deserve that nuanced and that delicate attention. And this is what I teach. I teach screenwriting, and I make sure that the students understand you're telling a story, but you're not just telling a story. You're putting this fully realized experience into a story, and you're giving an insight into this character. So you want to be fully realized in all dimensions, all the good, the bad, everything. Don't leave anything out.
So we have some questions from the audience, and there were some really good ones, and they kind of tie into what we've been talking about. And someone had asked from the audience, because many of you on this panel have also written novels. So Yi, myself, I know Nia's working on something. I'm not sure about you, Malikah, but how do you decide? How do you decide? And is it something that you have to just stick as, I'm going to say that, how do you decide, should it be a book, or should it be a short, or should it be a full length? How you decide when you start writing your story, what you're going to do with it? I guess that's what they're asking.
Well, it goes back to what Malik was saying about novels and what Tohib was saying about books. You know, the reason why I shifted, because I started off writing books and I shifted to film because you reach more people that way. Film is global and it's 2 hours max, and people are sitting still looking at these visual representations of your story. So to me, it made more sense to put the storytelling up on the big screen.
To join on that, okay, somebody, I'm sorry. Yeah,
I don't think that's something to apologize for.
No, yeah, definitely. Okay, I'm not sorry.
Nope, we Black and Muslim, we all know.
We're Black and Muslim.
You notice nobody said nothing. Nobody
said
yeah. Well, it's, you know, it's a saying that, you know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Why do I want to write 1,000 words if I can give you the picture, right? So that's it. To be in full disclosure, to be really honest, stories are stories to me, right? When it comes to my head, when I'm going to put it down, it's story. The only reason why I would opt for book is because of the financial, look, I'm not able to produce. I can't find, you know, people to fund. Oh, okay, but the stories, because stories actually disturb my head, right? I won't be able to sleep very well. They're waking me up. I just want to put it down. I just put it down. So that's why it's like my first intuition is to write them down as a novel. But really deep down, I can see them in the screen. And I mean, yeah, so it's basically looking at, you know, how feasible it is and things of that nature, right? But
so
you have to choose.
Yeah, I'm not a novelist, and I don't plan on being one. Like, kudos to everyone who writes books. It's a lot. But I will say the one thing about books versus films is that books can tell stories in ways that films can't, because with films you have parameters, whereas with books you have words. Like, I tell people all the time, if there's some sort of movie adaptation of a book, go read the book first, because if you watch the movie first and then go read the book, you're going to be mad. Or like how some people, like I remember with Harry Potter, Lord, the nerds were so angry because there were certain parts of the book that weren't in the movie. And it was like, we're constantly explaining to them, you can't put everything in the movie. I have a certain amount of time. I have parameters. With books, you don't. So I'm not a novelist, but I do tip my hat to people who write, because to me, I feel like it takes much more, because you're going deeper than you can with a film per se. But yeah.
My novel, to be honest, was, you know, I wouldn't consider myself a novelist, right? I wrote Sooner, the screenplay. It was almost 200 pages.
Oh.
I knew that it needed to be edited down. I didn't know how much, because in my mind, I had convinced myself that this was my godfather. And so what if it's 3 hours? Who cares? You know? And it ended up being edited down. It's still like 160 pages. But with the fullness of the story, there were so many things that I was trying to decide out what to cut. Like what scene do I take out? You know, they call it killing your babies. Like I did not want to sacrifice
That's what my cup
any.
says.
What does it say?
Right now, I'm
Oh,
killing
I love it. I love it. I love it. It's like it's a literal thing. It's like it's sitting there and looking at the scene like, this is amazing. I don't want to kill this. You know, this child I've raised and cultivated. I spent a lot of time on the scene. You know, to then say, no, this has to go because it may be pushing the story forward, but is it necessary? And we have to, you know, you have to go through all that. And then Suna, I also knew with Suna that I did not have the financial means to do it at that time. And I was like, okay, so, you know, as an artist, I'm also an entrepreneur. And being born and raised Muslim and coming from the Atlanta Masjid and being raised by Brother Musin and Brother Hatim and Brother Salim, you know, my thought process is, how do I win first? I'm not waiting on financing. How do I win? What am I going to do? So my mind was like, okay, I can put this into a book. Let's do this in reverse. Let's reverse engineer it. Let's put it into a book format and then see if we can adapt it into a movie, even though it was a screenplay first. So that was kind of like my cheat thing. So then but it was such a great experience because in writing books, there's so much more to expose. There's so much more to go into. Now I can go into the character's thought. Now I can go into, you know, all of these details that, you know, the 1,000 words, like Brother Tahib was saying, like I can create these 1,000 words, whereas just a minute ago I only had a picture. So that was more my reason for even writing. And I wrote a novella before that, and I love short stories. I have a reader called Vandalism. It's full of poems and short stories. So I love to write prose, but my novel was definitely a thing out of more like necessity.
As a writer, I've always been a visual writer, and I credit that to the first stories that I've ever been introduced to were picture books, and the beautiful paint. And I say this all the time about John Steptoe because that's the earliest story I ever remember. It's this beautifully illustrated book called Stevie. And so ever since I've been writing, I've always been writing with visuals in mind. So it was a little bit easy for me to transition from novel writing to screenwriting, but the conventions of screenwriting are so different, and you have to condense what you're writing into what's only what you can see on the screen. So that kind of limits to you like what you can put on the page, but it also pushes your creativity in ways that you can tell the story through the visual medium. For example, a painting on the wall gives you insight to the character or who that person is, or the choice of what kind of furniture they have, or anything that you see on the screen has to help push the story forward, but also give you insight into the characters. So that to me was kind of an easy transition because of the kinds of storytelling that I had been doing on the page. So
Yeah, I definitely agree. Even though, you know, I have an undergrad in education in theater arts, but and I was really more focused in early in undergrad on like plays, and I was doing that, and I've staged plays at Yale and Harvard, but um, the noveling and writing stories, like Toyi was saying, is that, you know, I wanted those books. I wanted representation as an educator, things that I could show my students, you know, Muslim children coming up like me who may be the only, you know, Muslim child in that classroom for 12 years. I felt like that was a market that needed to be opened up. So I pushed myself into that, but I always see it, you know, whatever I'm writing, I see it, I hear it, you know, like it's live in my head. And people ask me, how do you write? And it's just like, man, I know these people. They talking to me, you know, and I'm just typing what I see it.
yeah.
And you know, I could be sleeping and I will hear it. It will wake me up out of my seat. I will see the whole scene, and I'm just writing it down. So when I went back to the screenwriting in graduate school, it was it was, I did have to pull back some, you definitely, once you get into that novelist screen, when you're writing through the whole scene, you do have to pull back a little bit. But, like Nia was saying, there's so many other ways. It's all the same, because if you see it and you hear it and you're living it and you experience, they become your babies that you're birthing. It's the writing process is still the same, at least for me. We have another question, and someone was asking about who do you feel are your who do you consider masters are the art form right now, and who do you feel are rising stars? Who's masterful? For me, I'm just gonna. I love Ava, but I think there's other people. Ava DuVernay. I also feel like, of course, Spike Lee, when we're talking about Black film, for me, was, the Spike Lee flick, when you saw such a unique style, like, I'm just going to do my own thing. So Spike didn't care. He's like, I'm just going to do it my way. And I dig that as well.
Master.
To you.
Are we speaking like specifically Black or just in general?
Whoever. They didn't
for me, I'll just go off. Should I go? Okay. I'll say Julie Dash. Because of the fact of just her filmography may not be as well known per se, but it's definitely something that I've studied, especially getting more into film. So I'll give it to Julie Dash. Another person who I didn't really truly understand until I got to graduate school was Alfred Hitchcock. And a lot of times people see the things that he does and they be like, well, I don't understand what the big deal is, because everyone's been doing it. So it's normal for you to see now. But for like Psycho, for him to kill his biggest star in the first 5 minutes of the film, and people don't understand, like, people were mad at him because he killed off Janet Leigh in the first 5 minutes, and people were coming to see him. But just from that, just watching interviews of him and the way he approaches scenes. And then another I hate to, I'm naming all these white men, but another one whose films are not necessarily my cup of tea, but I still recognize his skill, is Stanley Kubrick. I'm not into the horror. I've only seen The Shining like once or twice. I still haven't done Clockwork Orange. It's too much for me. But in terms of studying how he used color in his films, I was like, okay. I know on TikTok there's a whole the Kubrick stare is coming back into the pantheon of, like, it's making its way. It's becoming a meme now, which is the infamous stare where you look between your eyebrows, and it's called the Kubrick stare or whatever. But up and coming, definitely Ava. I think Ava is really, especially given her story of how she got into directing. I think Ava is proof of, if you study it, you can do it. Like, a lot of people think you have to go to a 4-year school and all that. You don't. Yes, I went to school, but it was for resources and equipment. Everything else, University of Google, YouTube College is free and open 24/7. And those resources are there for you to learn. You have to do the work, but you don't have to go into debt for it. But definitely Ava, Ryan Coogler, I enjoy how he tells his stories. And it's little nuances sometimes, like, for instance, in Fruitville Station, the scene with the dog. A lot of people overlook that scene, but the scene with him going to the street and saving this dog that got hit, juxtaposed to the way his life ends later. I thought that was a really important scene that didn't happen. He put that in the movie itself. That wasn't part of the true story. So yeah, Ryan Coogler, definitely. Issa Rae as a business person, for her business model, I am studying what Issa Rae is doing. I enjoy her content too. I've been following her since Men's Education of an Awkward Black Girl, but what she's doing as a creative from the business standpoint, I really see. I appreciate how she's slowly but surely kind of building her empire and almost building her own, dare I say, network, to a point where she'll be the next Oprah. Even though I think they're saying Shonda's going to be the next Oprah. No, I think Issa is making a way in terms of someone who has like this network and influence, if that makes sense. Not Oprah as a billionaire per se, but Oprah as a network. I mean, Issa could be a billionaire too. I'm not trying to say she's not gonna get her money. I don't want no one saying I said Issa ain't gonna be a billionaire. That's not what I'm talking about. Like, I don't just look at Oprah for her money. I look at it for the work and what she's established in terms of her media conglomerate or empire or whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely.
And Taika
Well,
Waititi. I enjoy his movies.
Taika Waititi, yeah.
I enjoy
thought
his
you were gonna
movies.
say that.
I enjoy his
He's
movies.
amazing. Yeah. He's so talented. But I was heavily influenced by Francis Ford Coppola and Scorsese. And as an art
Classic.
form, like,
Yeah.
they're beautiful. Like, the films, I admire that visual painting, the light, the color, Also, that gangster feel that Scorsese's films tend to have. That, like, I grew up in the hood. Like, that's my lifestyle that I grew up in. So I kind of related to that. So having one of my scripts being compared to Scorsese really like had me floating. And so like that is, I guess, my base for like falling in love with cinema. However, if you want to talk contemporary, I love Barry Jenkins. Like, his work is beautiful. It's powerful, the way he tells stories, the images that he chooses. Like Barry Jenkins is like amazing. I could go on and on about Moonlight. But yeah, those are the kinds of films that I gravitate to because of the depth in which the emotions are explored without even saying much, and just the visual. Like, to me, The Godfather was like a painting that came alive. And I remember when I saw it for the first time, I watched it over and over and over again because of that. And then the emotion, that was able to be put on screen with, that story. But yeah, contemporary wise, I'm a big fan of Barry Jenkins and Gina Prince Bythewood. I love everything she does is great. Like, her storytelling, the visuals, everything, the music. I love those types of films.
I think Kasi Lemons is like probably
yes,
like one
Eve's
of the
Bayou.
top. Yeah, Eve's Bayou. Even Talk to Me was
Yeah.
next level. I'm a big fan of the Hughes brothers.
Of course.
I think the Hughes brothers are underrated filmmakers.
I was going to say that. Yeah, forgot about them.
Was like one of my adult movie, Book of Eli. The same thing Nia's saying, like that whole painting. My favorite movie of all times is Godfather 2. All times. Like, this is, I love the Godfather trilogy, but 2, I mean, if it comes on TV, there's not even a question of, I have no control over the television in my house. But if Godfather 2 comes on AMC, we're gonna watch this. Like, it's just what's happening. Contemporary wise, up and coming, I have to say that I love how Barry Jenkins paints the screen. I'm a big fan of that. I think Ryan has a lot of power in his storytelling. I'm actually, after watching American Skin, I am, I'm really back on the Nate Parker train too. Like, Nate.
I haven't watched it yet.
Goodness gracious, Nate Parker.
And so that's it. In Atlanta, we have a guy, a brother named Bobby Huntley, who's actually making a lot of noise. I just want to shout out Bobby. He's anybody knows him, but he has a mean brush stroke. I also really love this sister who made this film called Jen. It was really
okay. Nigella Mukman, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that was really bananas, right?
Excellent.
So there's a lot when it comes to up and comings. I'm looking around all the time at independents, like true independents that are doing things and paying attention to what.
Yeah, Rada Blank, 40-year-old version was amazing.
Like my classmates that I feel to become
Numa
Come through.
Perrier's Jezebel is so beautiful. You should watch.
Yep.
It was like a math class right now. I have no idea. I must have watched their movies, but I'm like, so I like Tyler Perry. I'm gonna choose the one that nobody says. I like Tyler Perry.
I like Tyler Perry. Listen
I
now,
like
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I'll say it out loud.
Yeah, I
This
like
is-
his
Appreciate him
drama.
as a
Call-
business
he can
man.
call me too,
We're saying this out loud.
because he need somebody in his writer's room.
Okay, okay. So
You need
yeah,
a
I like
lot
and I
of
like okay, so I'm just gonna So if I don't think Ice Cube direct, but I like his movies. So I'm not that familiar with the American film terrain, but I did put in the chat some of Nigerian filmmakers that I look up to, and they're very good. Kunle Afolayan, if you look up his film on Netflix, is really bringing African films to the world. Kemi Adetiba, she's based in the US, but she's also from Nigeria. She makes good movies too. And Tunde Kilani is like the master of filmmaking. I've watched his movie a million times. So yeah.
I appreciate that exposure. I'm glad you put that in the comments.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I was gonna also say John Singleton. I just, talked
John,
about,
my God.
because
Look,
he
John,
just passed away very recently. But
Boys
for
in the
sure,
Hood.
Boys in the Hood was, it
That was-
changed. I was just like, woo, okay. That was phenomenal. And I think in terms of
Also what he's doing with
like-
Snowflake. That the
Snowfall.
series that he's doing with Snowflake,
Snowfall.
I thought, a Snowfall. Yeah, I thought that was, really,
Yeah.
really, really, really powerful. I'm actually excited for this next season to start. And I was scared when he passed away. I was like, are they going to drop the ball? Because I know John's to be headstrong. I'm sure that he's, he was fighting for certain things when it came to the execs and that type of thing. And I was very scared about what was going to happen. But that last season, they still held it down. So John is definitely, most high.
Robert Townsend as
Legend.
well. Robert
Townsend, the Band Peoples, they were all very influential back in the 90s. But in 2014, the Muslim world was shook up with the Ertugrul franchise that started. We didn't get it into the West, I guess until 2016, 2017. But it has become a huge platform, now that it has reached the West. Do you all see something like this, or see it as possible to do this with a Black Muslim figure?
So first of all, let me say this about Ertugrul. I don't think I'm saying it right.
Wait a minute, don't say nothing bad about Ertugrul on here now.
I'm
Wait
not.
a minute.
I'm not. I know you Muslims love that show. I looked at season 1 and I saw it had 78 episodes, and I said I'll be back later. Because my question
It took me a year to watch it. Yeah.
I started thinking about production. I was like, I need to see production schedules. Like, how is this? What? That's multiple seasons in American cinema. So I was just like, how's this working? But I know, like, my 74-year-old father was watching that show. So, and his generation was watching that show.
Yes,
so I
they
just
were.
think I haven't seen it yet, not because I don't want to. It's just it's 78 episodes. I was like, okay. But I don't know, like, the optimistic me wants to say yes, but realistic, it's like, will it be in my lifetime? Because we know that it's based off of a particular Turkish, is it Turkish? I don't even know. But
Yes, it is.
the question
Turkish.
is, could we see could we see a Mansa Musa film like that? Because that would be my answer to that. Like, what's the Black Muslim version? Mansa Musa, the richest man who ever lived. But we know that Danny Glover has been and is still struggling to get his Toussaint L'Ouverture film done, even though France did one with Jimmy Jean-Louis, which was not bad. I thought it was pretty good, but we know that there is still a struggle to show Black people as the winner, the hero, the person on top in this country. So eventually, yes, that's the optimist in me. We will definitely get that Mansa Musa film. We'll get that Queen Nzinga film. We get that Ya Santo Eskia Muhammad. We'll get all of those all of those films. But I don't know if it'll be, I don't know. There's a lot of I don't know, because we have to look at society and how they view historical Black Muslim figures. Like the fact that the Muslim world is not bragging about Mansa Musa says a lot. The richest man that ever lived was Muslim, and Muslims don't say nothing about it, but they love this show. And that's not a shot at this show, but it speaks to the way society views successful Muslims, Black Muslims. So, you know, it could happen. When it will happen is the question that I can't say, because society is interesting when it comes to those things.
Filmmaking itself is very complicated. Like, it's not something that you can just poof and make a film. You know, not only is it expensive, but there are so many different moving parts. And then on top of that, there's so many people involved in the creation of a film. It's not like one single artist who's responsible. So to create something like that takes into consideration the anti-Black sentiment that the world follows. You know, it's like, we have to overcome anti-Blackness first before we can actually get people on board to put enough money and manpower into creating something like this to give it the attention and the care that it deserves. You know what I'm saying? Because just making a short film is hard, it's complicated. And, you know, just 78 episodes, come on.
One season, there's like 4 seasons.
That's
and I was
crazy.
just like, how
Five
did they
seasons.
do
5
this?
seasons.
That's
Five.
crazy.
How? Like,
Yeah.
Because
Now
they
Osman is
have
got.
the manpower, and that's how.
and it's like
yeah.
each episode is an hour long. So it's like,
Uh-huh.
you
And-
can't even watch one a day. You still won't be done for the whole.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we have to factor in like the Turkish government role in it. So it's definitely, like I say, all movies are propaganda. It's a way of asserting their soft power. You know, there is kind of like a renaissance of the Ottoman empire in Turkey right now. You know, the president of Turkey. You know, I think the executive producer of the movie is like a minister in Turkey itself. So you gotta. So it's right. I think it's not an accident that the show has that success. It's created to be that successful, because that kind of resources and power and everything. It's not something that can be done through the story writing alone, right? And if like Sister Malikah said, for example, the Mansa Musa story, for example, if an African government, like Senegal government or Gambia government, pour a lot of effort, it's all about that the Turkish government is putting on, you know, people will be forced to say it, right? So at this point, like that's what is happening with Etugo. You know, in all over the world, the Saudi Arabia, they had to like ban it because of the power that it's showing. So
but they're still watching it there with the VPNs.
Of course, yeah. It's so good that, you know, they couldn't stop it, right? So, you know, it's something that needs a huge backup, right?
You know, but it's something interesting to be said about that statement, right? Because film does have the ability to be its own machine, right? This propaganda thing, this thing. And I think that the change that we want to see, right, is going to have to happen with us, right? We're going to have to, as an overall community, understand the power of making films that have us, if we can be brave enough, that show us in all of our glory, right? In all of our good and all of our bad. And that we know that by making these films, we are, you know, at the end of this, you know, the film company had always been called Takwa. Why? Because that's what this is at the end of the day. You know, we are sharing information. There's so many things that we can do in the film, but we're going to have to get to the point of being able to greenlight it, because just like it has taken, you know, 100 years for us to say, okay, we can show Black people as something other than blackface,
Right.
you know, or something other than a maid. You know, we don't have another 100 years to wait for people to say Muslims can be something other than bean pie slinging terrorists. We're going to have to create that vehicle and be brave enough to say, yo, this story needs to be told, but these people aren't one-dimensional. They are full. I mean, even when you look at like Kung Fu, the only reason most of us even know anything about Kung Fu is because of Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee doesn't bring film to America if the Chinese government doesn't get involved and say, yo, we want to make Enter the Dragon about Russian spies and, you know, that's our propaganda. Well, the average person doesn't even know that that's what the movie is about. They just think, they don't know why Bruce Lee is breaking into at this island and Enter the Dragon and trying to find out. They don't know who these people are. They don't know that there's even a government thing going on. We just know about Kung Fu. So it's about, you know, about having the backing. Going back to your previous question, even about the support. It's about having that backing and being able to say, I don't have to go to Hollywood for a green light. You know, I can go, I have these resources and this, that, and the third to be able to pull this off.
Exactly.
Yep.
What about, how do you feel about, because Malikah had brought up, was it Danny Glover and the Mansa Musa? How do you feel about non-Muslims covering Muslim stories, especially Black Muslims? And, you know, the Night in Miami that just came out with, who was that? Who did that one?
Regina King.
Regina King.
Regina King.
Mm-hmm.
How do you all feel about that?
So I have a lot of thoughts on that because I feel like she did a really good job of directing the film, and it was based on a play. So we know that it's not like a true story. It's not like these are actual events, right? But a lot of people a lot of Black Muslims got a little bit offended with the representation of Muhammad Ali. And one of the responses was, well, he would have never had a drink. And I'm thinking, that's what you're like focusing on? Really? Finally, we have a well-made film that, you know, depicts these men. Similar to the way Malcolm X was depicted in his autobiography film, where they're really fully realized human beings. They're being vulnerable in this story. If a Muslim had done it, yes, it would have had a different perspective because Muslims have greater insight to that. That's their lifestyle. That's who we are. So I personally did not have a problem with the film, but I know a few Muslims did because of that. But here's the thing. Until we can fund our own projects, we're not going to have authentic storytelling from a Black Muslim perspective. That's just the bottom line. It all goes back to who funds this project and who's in charge of this project. And all these decisions are being made by people who are funding this project. So until we can fully fund our own projects and create these stories for theater, for the screen, they're not going to be what we think they should be. So it's like, alhamdulillah, we have this. This was a beautifully shot film. I thought it was very heartfelt. Like, of course, you're not going to please everybody, but you do the best you can with what you have. So.
And just working inside those constructs, like working inside the constructs of the film industry. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of compromise if you're going to take that route, that because there is someone else funding it. You just, like Neil was saying, there's just no way around until, you know, it's he who controls the means to production owns production. I mean, that's just, you know, that goes for anything. That goes for our food. That goes for it. We're never going to have good food if all we have is Kroger. It's not going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Because they have to produce at such a large scale to cover their losses and to get their revenue, the quality and authenticity, I can't be concerned whether you get a real apple or not. Look, it just needs to look like an apple so you can take it home, right? So that I can get the finances recouped from the last 3 apples that went right, you know, and that is the film industry to draw that type of analogy. So until we are saying, you know, we run this, they're always, I was doing an interview for the sister Tassili. We're working on a documentary called Raw Reality. Tassili, she does the vegan food in the West End, has been there for a long time, right? And we were talking about Judas and the Black Messiah. And the brother who was there, he was because he was from Chicago, you know, Jeff Fort had been a part of his life. He knew all of the ins and outs of things that had happened in Chicago. He couldn't wrap his mind around the movie. That wasn't how the chairman was, and this, that, and the third. But at the end of the day, the sister Tassili said something very powerful. She said, sometimes we don't get everything in one thing. We only get crumbs. We only get these pieces of, but these crumbs, if we follow them, they start to lead us to a place, right? It's just like they're leaving these on the road for us to get somewhere. So even though we don't always get the authenticity, there still needs to be a certain amount of appreciation for the amount of steps and the crumbs that are allowed to be left so that we can get to a place of like absolute realness.
Yeah, I agree and disagree with both points. As for like Night in Miami, like I understood some of the frustration that some Muslims had, and while I didn't feel that strongly about it, I understood. So like the idea of seeing Cassius Clay drink, it wasn't necessarily that, but it was like, would he do it in the presence of Malcolm X after he just joined the nation? But conversational wise, I get that. However, at the same time, I do also agree that, you know, we are not telling these stories, and so we are not going to get the correct representation. And I don't think that Regina King or the screenwriter / playwright, his name escapes me, but I don't think there was any ill intent. I don't know who they talked to, but I do think they did the best with what they have. Now, that's not saying that they couldn't have dug deeper. I'm not saying that they're completely just, you know, they're just off the hook for it. But at the same time, it could have been much worse. It could have been much worse. Yep. On the flip side of that, though, when you are telling stories from a community that is not yours, you do have to do your due diligence in researching what the culture of this community is. And that's something that it's not only researching it, but then applying it. Because we were in a conversation on Clubhouse about this, and a sister there was talking about when they did the Ali movie, they came to Chicago to speak to Imam W.D. Muhammad, who knew Malcolm X, and we're talking to him about, you know, just in order to inform Mario Van Peebles' portrayal of Malcolm X. And then none of that mattered because his portrayal was something completely different. So it's not only about people getting the information, it's about then choosing whether or not they're going to do their due diligence to apply it to the movie. And we have no control over that. We really don't, because we're not paying for it. So that's where the importance, and I agree, of us having to really be able to finance to tell our stories. And that's also where the community comes in, because now we're in a very unique situation where you no longer have to go to any of the 3 major studios to get your movie done, because we got YouTube, Vimeo, VHX, or is it VHX, VX, whatever. You have all these platforms where now you can put out your own product. And as a community, if you're going to complain about the way Muhammad or Cassius Clay Muhammad Ali was portrayed in One Night in Miami, then you need to come over here and also support the films that are telling the stories of the Muslims that you claim you want to see. And that's where the disconnect happens for me. And that's what bothers me, because when I see people complain about, oh, it ain't no Black filmmakers, I'm like, either you're lazy or you're lying, because Google is free. Everyone has it. And if you are my friend, do you know good and well there are Black filmmakers out there? Because I talk about them all the time. And there's nothing for you to Google Black Muslim filmmakers, and I guarantee you 3 out of 4 of the faces on this screen right now will show up. Yep. So I think there's a lot of moving pieces that goes to that. I don't think I don't expect Hollywood to ever get it right. I don't. I think it's just we're gonna have to do it ourselves, and we're gonna have to support ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree. And just to say everything, it's like this. Again, I'm quoting Chino Achebe again because he's my man. If somebody
Yes.
says that, you know, if you don't like how a story is written, go write yours. That's how Nigerian
Hello.
parents talk. You don't like the world, you know, you don't like what he did to you, go and do your thing, right? If you don't like how Muhammad Ali was portrayed, go and make yours. You can still make that. It's just as simple as that. So it's just a complaining game. I really don't like it. I really, really don't like it. You know, I'm just grateful if I can get something that portrays us in a beautiful way, I'll take it. I may not like it, but if I just walk towards doing what's right, that's it. You know, and the community that is complaining, like Mr. Malikah said, the same community who's not going to support you. So
I think that's a great segue to our final question, which is how can our communities, how can Muslims support us? How can, what are the steps, what action steps need to be put into place? And how can we support each other and those who are coming behind us? How can we support each other? How can Muslims in the community support what we're doing right now?
First of all, educate yourself, because I found that in our community, there is a lack of understanding of film and media literacy. So there, like Malika was saying, there's a disconnect between the people who are complaining and what they want. So the bridge can be built by just educating yourself as to how film works. And it's like she said, Google's free. Also, support with your money. You know, there's always a way to send your funds directly to these filmmakers. Venmo, Cash App, GoFundMe, Seed and Spark, Kickstarter. There are ways to help support by just sending your money. But also, if you can't send money, share, retweet, share emails, word of mouth. That's how things got done. That's how Tyler Perry got so big, by word of mouth. So don't just share and just be complaining, well, I don't see any representation of Black Muslim people. Get on your computer, do the Google, find the people and send them your dollars.
Point blank period. She said it.
That's it.
That's it.
What Miss Sister Nia said was absolutely right. Now I'm gonna turn like the limelight on us, on filmmakers. I think as a Muslim community is a small community compared to the larger American society. I think one of the things that should be worked on is more collaboration. Again, there's a saying in Yoruba, if snakes don't work together, that's why they get killed, right? So that's kind of saying. And if you put, you don't have that kind of brooms in America, but think about the brooms in Harry Potter, like the one that the witches, So if you take a strand of broom out, you can cut it. It's easy. But if you put it together and break it, that's hard. So if and that's something that I've been intentional about. It's just that personally, I'm kind of like shy and to reach out to people, but I need to be working on that. It's right. Truly, sometimes we want some kind of authenticity for our production, and I just want to do my mind only. But I think we can go a long way because I have an audience that you might not have, and you have an audience that I don't have, and they're all Black audiences, and then we can, so collaboration is. I mean, it's not just in movie. In the industrial in the workforce right now, it's all about like collaboration, right? It's flattening the table. So my charge would be to us, collaborate more, connect more, and yeah, so connect more and do things together,
Right.
Yeah.
I think the combination of those insights is probably like the sweet spot. Like that's the winning formula, right? Like we need the community to send their dollars and to support, and we also need to be supporting one another, right? And there is always something to be said about measuring your society against your sisters, right? So if we watch what Black women have done over the past decade, let's just talk about the past decade. If we talk about the amount of strides that they have made in film, and although these things can be incremental, and we can always say, yes, more should happen, and yes, we need more, Black women directors and writers, and, behind the scenes, we need all of that. But if we pay attention to what, and we have sisters right here, what you all have done, right, is put the pressure on where everybody knows you need to be dealing with, you have to have, you can't make a film in 2021 and think you're not going to have a Black woman somewhere in a position without people looking at you sideways, like you're going to be tone deaf if you don't do it, right? Because a movement has been created that moves us past just it being the interest of this one group. It has now become a societal interest because there's a movement behind it, and it's recognized that, yo, we're a force. You're going to either deal with us or we're going to run over you, right? So there is, the combination of those two, I think, actually creates that sweet spot where we say, where we're able to decide that being a Black Muslim creative is important to the world, and the world has to recognize our importance.
Yeah.
Ditto. Everyone's said everything.
Yeah, those were great. We have one more question that I wanted to fit in before we left. How can Black Muslim screenwriters control our narratives in an industry that is so committed to reducing identities and experiences to caricatures?
Oh,
Well,
I mean, you
we
can go ahead,
just
Nia.
Well, you have to fund the right people. I mean,
There you go.
the people with the money are the ones who make the decisions. So you got to give your money to the right people, pretty
Indeed.
much. And
Yeah.
we've got talent right here. We've got people who are actually creating right here. So support us. And I've been working with Malikah for a while, and hopefully we're going to get together in person very soon. COVID kind of put a kibosh on that. But, if we have the right people putting together these productions, we will get the authenticity. We'll get the stories that we're looking for.
Also, I don't think you should expect Hollywood to do it. Like, if you're expecting Hollywood to tell these stories, you're going to be disappointed. Hollywood is made for, ran by, and made to benefit white men, just like this country, right? And so if we're honestly waiting on Hollywood to acknowledge our stories, you're going to be waiting for a long time. Hollywood has historically acknowledged things after there's been pressure to do it. So Hollywood is, putting out all these Black films, and all these platforms are putting out all these Black films, and they're showcasing all these Black sitcoms are getting back on are starting to stream again because of the pressure of society, not because they wanted to. So like Nia said, you have to support those of us who are doing it and stop waiting, because a lot of people wait for Hollywood to validate somebody before they say, oh, okay, I can support them. For what? Like, no, you need to, if you really truly support Black filmmakers, then don't try to wait until we're nominated for an Oscar to then say, oh yeah, I support her. Like, no, support me now while I'm trying to get this film made about you and your family. So yeah, definitely not waiting on Hollywood to tell the story you want to tell. Like, we're out here, there's, whether it's the people on this call, Nigel Mukman, Ayana Sharif, Qasim Bashir, Sultan Sharif, Dr. Amin Abdul, there's so many Black Muslims who are telling stories that you can support. Once again, Google is free. All these people have websites, PayPals, Venmos, Kickstarters, Seed and Sparks, Indiegogos. And if you really about that life, then you will seek and support. It's not about waiting for Hollywood to validate anybody.
Right.
And there's other ways of supporting too. Just something just popped in my head when she said that. Even like when I released Sooner, like to have Black girls read and that type of thing, review the book, those types of things. So support is not just, we have Muslims in other industries that can be pushing for the greater good of us all. So you know, we need bloggers, and we need, you know, vloggers and influencers who are sharing our works, not just, you know, not just coming out and buying the ticket, but what about the other ancillary markets that help to build, because Hollywood is not just built on movies alone.
No.
You know what I'm saying? It's Entertainment Weekly and Entertainment Tonight.
Yep.
And, you know, it's all of these other things that create this viewpoint. A star is made. It's not, nobody, they don't get on the screen and they're just dope and everybody's like, oh, he's a star. No, there's a press junket, and we need these other markets. So even as we have Muslims who are not screenwriters or filmmakers, they have other interests, that in those other interests, there is a machine that can be created that allows for Black Muslims to be able to, you know, put out a product and know somebody's going to review it, know that we're going to have a Muslim shadow and act review this and pump it and that type of thing. So there's other things that, you know, even a panel like this, these things have to exist for it to be outside of just the bubble of somebody sitting in front of their computer or behind their camera.
Right.
What are you working on before we get out of here? Anything that you would like to share?
I'm working on a Love in Ramadan script as a screenplay. I think something that can be done, and I think it will be very, very interesting to have it shot anywhere. I think I'm going to change it away from New York because I'm not in New York, but anywhere, I think it can be shot and it can make for a great movie.
Inshallah, I have a short film that I wrote called Amethyst, about a Black Muslim woman who can see souls. And so inshallah, I will be filming that this summer, depending on what COVID is going to do. But it's a short film. And I also am in the process of trying to get funding in order to shoot the pilot for a series called Sincerely Nisa that I wrote. And I'm writing my first feature.
I am releasing a documentary this year called Spring and Third. It is based on the Yin Yang Music Cafe, which later on became the Apache Music Cafe, which is actually the catalyst for the neo soul movement. A lot of times it's given to the Black Lily, but India Ari, Anthony David, Donnie Johnson, all came out of the Yin Yang Music Cafe. So we just wrapped up production in that, and we're starting to do the color and the sound and getting all that together. It's a feature-length documentary. I also just secured funding for a series of short films called Bread and Water. It's an anthology of shorts. They're all social political. They're in the spirit of a short that I just did a few years back called Break Fast, where food is kind of like the backdrop to talk about a lot of political things. So those are the two major projects that I'm working on this year.
That's dope. Currently, I am in pre-production for a short film. It's a supernatural thriller, and it's about mental health and a black woman, and she's trapped in her apartment, and there's a demon. That's what I'm working on for the short film aspect of Audace Entertainment. I'm also teaching screenwriting. Again, I'll be launching that in the summer. But the biggest thing that we're planning for 2021 is our crowdfunding campaign for our first feature film, The Trap, which is about Amina, who is she becomes a drug kingpin. She's a Muslim woman who's the daughter of an imam in Baltimore. And it's inspired by some true events. And that I will be launching, inshallah, a crowdfunding campaign for in the fall. And then, of course, we have the BMG Fly Film Festival every December, inshallah.
Sounds excellent. I want to thank all of you for this enlightening evening and discussing film and being Black and Muslim. It was really dope. All of you are dope and doing dope things. So I'm so lucky to have had you all here on this platform with About Islam, one of our sponsors. And here is the lady of the evening, Miss Layla Abdullah Polos.
I'm not the lady of the evening. That's you and these phenomenal people.
Well, you the intro and outro. So
I'm the intro and outro. But I'm going to take a minute.
You the hype one. You the hype
I'm
lady.
the hype girl, and I was stopping at the
up.
First of all, I'm a horror, supernatural, paranormal fan. I'm going to be looking out for those films because I'm telling you, I love it, love it, love it. All right, so I have a couple of things because I was chopping at the bit back here. I was like, okay, Baba, wait till I can get on. All right, y'all mentioned all these directors, but no one mentioned Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, you know, I
Oh boy!
Like for real, you ain't mentioned Tarantino. Kill Bill, Reservoir Dogs, for real.
Here's why I didn't mention.
Yeah, you don't rock with Nia shaking her head. No.
Here's why I didn't mention him.
Tarantino?
He's a cinephile in the aspect that he knows film, he studies it, all that. But each of his films has been his version of some sort of genre. So you've got the Western, you got blaxploitation, right. You've got the 70s Kung Fu flicks. So it's
That's
not
a great
like,
way to put it.
So it's not like he's a bad filmmaker, but it's not like I'm watching it and I'm
derivative.
Just like,
you're saying
he's showing that he studied film, and I give him that. He knows his film, but at the same time, his work has been consistently him recreating styles of film with the stories that he wants.
Okay, good point. All right, what about Norman Jewison? A Soldier Story, Injustice for All, Agnes of God.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah, there's so many filmmakers out there.
There's so many dope ones.
I had to put in my 2 cents, okay? And there was just one other.
That's about it.
The other point I wanted to make was about Regina King's rendition in A Night in Miami of Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X. The fact of the matter is that Muslims don't own Muhammad Ali or Malcolm X. Black people don't own Muhammad Ali or Malcolm X. They are figures to which so many people from so many backgrounds connected that we really don't own them. We can be a little irritated by the way that they're depicted, but the fact of the matter is that a lot of times they're being depicted from a perspective of people who connect with them. So as far as their blackness, it's like, black directors are going to connect. I'd rather it be a Regina King than Stanley Kubrick.
Tyler Perry.
I have a problem.
Lee Tyler.
You're over there acting up.
Tyler, I have to admit, he's a guilty sin. He has the largest studio in the world. You got to give him respect for that.
That's
business minded, I give it to him, but
business wise, like that's the framework.
I think he capitalizes a lot on those bad wigs. I think he realized,
except his wigs are never bad.
His wigs are bad, I think because everyone talks about the wigs of every single Tyler Perry production that he's just capitalizing off of it.
That's the least of his problems, but
exactly
that's a whole nother panel to talk about.
The Tyler Perry panel.
Tyler Perry panel.
Next year we'll have a Tyler Perry.
That would be cool.
Okay.
That would be really cool.
No, we definitely have to have another screenwriters panel because, when Juwayriyah said we need a screenwriters panel, I was like, yeah, I agree. Because it is really just a phenomenal form of storytelling.
Absolutely.
In ways that, and people, we need to appreciate ways that, it diverges from novel writing or book writing or short story writing and what it contributes that you can't find in novels and short stories and stuff like that, and vice versa. So I thought it was really, really great. I have to lash out a little tiny bit at you guys because everyone was saying, oh, support us. NBA Muslims has been here since 2016 and we rarely get tagged when someone's got something going on. Nia's very good at it. Juwayriyah is very good at it. The rest, everybody else, no. I'll tell you you. We are an email away. I got this going on. I got this going down, and we created this platform just for that purpose, So just, a lot of times it's like, let the bloggers know what's happening, so that we can
Collaborate. We got to collaborate.
and collaborate.
Mhm.
Absolutely. But this was wonderful and phenomenal. I can't wait for everybody's work. And I just saw Tahib say Love and Ramadan full-length movie. Okay, which is awesome. I would love to be able to do my own movie because I have like romantic suspense and everything
Do
like that.
it.
Yes.
That screenwriting's hard.
Listen, Studio Binder will show you how to do it. You can go to Celtics. You get 2 free scripts that you can use. You don't have to pay for the extra stuff. You can shoot it on your cell phone. All these fancy schmancy cell phones. You can do it.
Get
You do
into
not
that.
have
We
to
can
go
get
to
into
school.
that.
You
Oh,
don't
yeah,
have
we
to
need
go to
some
school
workshops
to
and
make
stuff.
films.
I teach screenwriting.
So you said you could act, Layla, act in the film.
you can help
Do
you
it,
You
write.
know what it is?
She
My-
could. She could.
my books have a lot of my romances have been very, very successful, and I cringe at them being made to film because there are certain scenes that are just like, no, you can't put that on film. It's like, yeah, you can put the rest of the story on film, but you can't put that on film. But maybe I should.
You can
take it.
insinuate it. We don't have to see it. It can be
Yeah,
insinuated.
and see, on film is why I totally agree with closing the bedroom door. Shut that sucker.
That's why you have the directors and the filmmakers to help you to do all of that creative stuff in your film.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jazakallah, Malik Salaam, Nia Dixon, Malikah Shabazz, Tobin Adejuma, and Juwayriyah. Thank you, everyone, for joining us again for another excellent Black Muslim Authors Conference panel. See, I told you at the beginning of the month that it was going to be like this all month long. Every single panel, everyone has delivered. And our next panel
Shout them out. Shout out my peoples.
is releasing the ink, right? Releasing the ink is
Releasing the ink.
Black men Muslim authors. They are
All
gonna
men. We are
Ooh.
off. We are off the panel. We get them full reign.
That's their
Shout out to
panel.
Ashley Jackson coming up on
And
Sunday. You make sure y'all
Ashiq
tune in.
Jackson,
Yes.
Atlanta.
Atlanta,
He
Atlanta,
coming back.
Atlanta. Okay, and they're going to be talking about how they came to become writers in Muslim culture, which discourages them so often from doing just that. Okay. So it's going to be an excellent, excellent panel because look at all that happened so far and tonight. Yes. So now I would like to thank our sponsors, NBA Muslims, Muslim Girls Reads, Every Kind of Lady, the Muslim Anti-Racism Collaborative, Hot Hijab, Daybreak Press, the African American Muslim Alliance of Tampa, and the Muslim Connection, and Heart Women and Girls. You can find out all about our sponsors on our conference page. Do not forget to sign up for updates on the events because when people sign up, they get special access to certain things like giveaways. Okay.
Giveaways.
So don't forget to sign up for those. Visit our Teespring store. We got excellent stuff. We got excellent mugs, black on both sides. Mugs. See, everyone like that black on both sides? We got mugs, we got t-shirts, we got all kinds of stuff right at our Teespring store for you guys to wear and enjoy and assert your Muslimness and your blackness at the same time. All right. Visit the BMACon conference page where you get more information about our authors, our screenwriters, the work that they do, our book fair that we have going on, and our special giveaways. Is a lot, it's like we're a little over halfway through the month, but we still got more in these last 10 days of Black History Month. So please visit us at www.pathos.com/blog/NBA Muslims/BMACon. And it's actually also right here in the comment section or the comment section. Or the comment section?
Over here.
One of those ones.
Over here.
Over here. It's
Over
over
there.
here. It's over here. It's over here. All right. Wonderful stuff. Do not miss us. 11:30 a.m. on Sunday. I hope you guys will be sitting in because these are some Black men authors. And it's just like, oh, I'm going to be like, I want to know. All right. So we'll catch you at the next panel. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Salam.